Yeah, y'all ready? Does y'all ready for this play? And can you set up a confetti cannon in my home?
I don't know, but that was the first thing anybody heard on the stream. My name is Tony
Dun, dun,
Vicenta.
dun, dun, dun.
This is Plus One EXP's Roll for Content actual play channel, but we're not doing an actual play. I don't know why I said that. We're sitting down today to do Prestige Class. Prestige Class is a series we do here on the channel where we sit down with people from the RPG industry. First of all, that I just think are swell, but second of all, that I think the rest of us could probably learn something from their experiences, the work that they do. Today we are sitting down with Jarrett Crater and Fiona Maeve Geist. I am super excited to talk to them a little bit more, but we're a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. You can find everything we do at Plus One EXP across all the social media platforms. You can also find me at Tony Vicenta, or you can find our website at +1exp.com. Our hope, our desire is to help indie tabletop game players find great games that they can fall in love with and help designers of those games find great players who love their games. If you want to support any of that, there's a ton of links below my face if you're on Twitch, or if you're not on Twitch, you know, you're on YouTube, and probably we'll get seeing those links also too in some other way, shape, or form. Or you're on Facebook. Hey buddies, like, how's it going? There's other social media platforms. Facebook's great. You should try some of the other ones out there, see if you like them better. For those of you who aren't familiar with Jarrett or Fiona, that's not entirely surprising, though. If you picked a game from a number of publishers off your shelf, opened it up, and looked at some of the people who were helped manage the project, edited the project, or helped make it happen in the modern indie RPG scene, you might see their names in there. They run something that is called the Moonrat Conspiracy, which I just want to know, first and foremost, for y'all to introduce yourselves, but for somebody to tell me where the name Moonrat Conspiracy came from. And if you can tell us what the Moonrat Conspiracy is, please do.
We're going to have to kill you and your entire audience.
Well, that's fine. I'm faster than they are. No, go ahead and tell people who you are and a little bit more about what you'll do.
Jared, do you want to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I thought that you want to go first. Yeah.
Jarrett, go first.
Okay. You want to know about Moonrat Conspiracy?
I want to know about you, but I also want to know about Moonrat Conspiracy. Who are you first?
I'm Jarrett, and I help RPG books get made. Work as an editor, project manager, developer. I have done some pretty crappily scrawled art. Tie a little bit of layout here and there, play testing, convention games, public play games, online games. I just like games a lot.
Awesome. Sweet. And Fiona.
Hi, I'm Fiona Maeve Geist. I do purchasing for Exalted Funeral and editing for a lot of people. I guess I also do dev. I don't have any idea how to do layout. And am happily just, also incompetent at art. I think it's important to lead with your weaknesses. And I do a lot of coordinating-y stuff, which is, fun, mostly, I hope.
Cool.
And my suggestion for the name for our group was, it turns out, copyrighted. So,
Wizards of the Coast. I get it.
Yeah, it turns out that brand is really locked down. But no, it was a reference to Legati. But Legati, after True Detective, has copyrighted some of his phrases. I think because, True Detective really did rely on a lot of his ideas.
Very cool. So tell us about what a little bit about what the Moonrat Conspiracy is, because if somebody Googles Moonrat Conspiracy, they're going to come up with probably one Reddit post that vaguely references it, and now this live stream. Those are the two things that are going to show up if you Google it on the internet. And so tell us a little bit about
web developers. It's one thing. Just none of us know how to design a website, I don't think.
I also feel like if you're a conspiracy, you don't want to be
Um,
easily discoverable. Like you want to be in the shadows. You want to be in the background. You know, you want to be the dark cabal that controls the entire indie RPG scene. So tell us how you're working to do that.
Well, no, it
I
wasn't. It
mean,
wasn't intended that way. Um, so MRC springs from Fiona and our great friend Christian Kessler. The three of us working together on a bunch of RPG stuff over the years, and just kind of goofing. And Christian has a version where he came up with the name for it. I think it had something to do with. I try to claim that I came up with it, the name of it. So we're just gonna fight perpetuity.
Yeah.
About that. I really liked Fiona's idea better, but it was copyrighted. So yeah, it's just a way for us to kind of put in some of the books. You'll see the little Moonrat logo that Christian made for us, and just kind of get noticed here, there, and everywhere. It's really informal. We don't have like we don't have a website. We don't have like a group health plan, although that would be amazing at some point someday. But we very quickly got a few folks along with us. Our good friend Corey Bryn and Jared Sinclair and Vi Waffle Bunny and Anxiety Wizard and Jump Golem, Meredith Silver. And it's just a loose group of folks who do back end stuff, editing, layout, proofing, design, hyperlinking PDFs, just all that kind of stuff. It just, the name just sort of stuck. The only published thing that we did together as a group was a shirt that says "Get High, Play RPGs." I'm not wearing it today because it's in the laundry. Dang it!
That's awesome. Girk says, what is that on the hat? Can't tell if it's a fish or a seal or something else.
Yes, I knew it was going to work. It's a hat. This hat is actually nicknamed Fish Hat Arneson after a drawing that someone did late at a Gen Con after hours. I think it was Wayne Snyder did it, Fish Hat Arneson. And then Fiona had a segue into Arneson.
Oh yeah, Arneson passed yesterday. Not yesterday this year, but that's the anniversary of his death, and I think there's some movement to have a, remembrance or recognition on that day, for the purposes of him being the goofier side of the original game, since he was the one that was wargaming like the siege of Stalingrad with like a gigantic radioactive slug, versus the more accountant-minded aspects of the original game.
Oh yeah, awesome. Casualty CDG says, "Get High, Play RPGs" was his nickname in high school. I should have read the second half of that before I started saying it out loud.
I think it's a sentiment a lot of people can relate to.
True fact. You
trying to
can't.
bring-
Go ahead.
Just trying to bring people together, celebrate, the core spirit of RPGs of you can do something when you're high with your friends. It helps if you just have these weird polyhedrals and talk about, whatever.
Right.
And it actually is inscribed on the temples of my glasses because I got them from Zinni, and they were like, "You can customize your frames," and I was like, for $4, I'm totally putting that. It's although the thing is, there's no spaces, so it looks like Get Thigh, Play RPGs.
Yeah.
So Get Thigh, Play RPGs.
So after you get high, you order some fried chicken, you get thigh, and then you play RPGs. And so
There we go. There we go.
Speaking of which, let's talk about how each of you got involved with playing RPGs. Like there's something about designing, editing, doing layout, all those other pieces that I want to get into, and I want people to understand because overwhelmingly when I talk to small creators, they don't know how to move their projects forward. And I think Moonrat Conspiracy and some of the communities that you're plugged into do such an excellent job of helping small and first-time creators navigate, work together, collaborate. And we could look at the last Zine Quest, which we'll talk about a little bit, some of the things that came out of the Mosh community and some other pieces, but y'all really are doing some phenomenal work. But just to start off with, how did you get involved? Let's start with Fiona this time, playing role-playing games. What was some of your earliest experiences with that? What got you into it?
A child therapist suggested that I play it. I have like a lot of social difficulties. I'm a very anxious person. Also, I didn't have a lot of people to play with, and it was very hard to get books. So like my copy of the second edition Monster Manual, like the spine is broken from me reading it when I was younger. And like in hindsight, it's not even very good in the like grand scheme of D&D monster manuals. It's got like a lot of the it's just an era where like the art is it's thing. But like a lot of the early influences on it about culture and ecology and stuff were really interesting to me. I did play games on and off where like largely a bunch of people would get excited about a new edition and we'd play something out of the core and it would go about as well as that goes. And then, we'd pick up and play a few more times, but never really had like a lot of focus. And in college, I played Call of Cthulhu and Paranoia mostly. And then at like, a certain point, I was reading a lot of blogs because I was working a job I didn't like very much as an academic and didn't really want to focus on a lot of grindy aspects of teaching. I focus in fairly depressing subject matter. I mostly bummed out young people. It, is also just not an easy job to work. So, that was kind of my escapism. And I was doing a thing where I read a lot of second edition books and wrote about like writing stuff in them, like what I found that was interesting in what was clearly work for hire on Facebook. And, I had a Twitter and Mabel Harper and I followed each other, and Mabel eventually suggested I join G+, which is when I started playing a lot of games and running games. And, like also because I have weird OCD stuff, was marking up, things that people had written and being like, oh, hey, here, like this is a thing that you've done that is like free. There's a couple typos, you could fix them. And was kind of doing that at Pay What You Want. And then Jarrett kind of told me to start charging money, like actually value my labor. And that's, sort of how I got joined into that whole thing. And that's maybe a good segue to Jarrett. That's how our paths intersected.
A couple things the chat want everybody to know first, though. First and foremost, Malchitos wants you to know, Fiona, to always remember the computer loves you and knows what's best. And that, which for anybody out there watching who doesn't know, it's a Paranoia reference. I'm pretty sure. And then, Malchitos may know something neither of us do. The computer may actually love you and know what's best. And then. And then Egoless says, out of all the wisdom that Jarrett imparts upon us, him not spouting off on Twitter is at the top, because people were asking about how they can follow Jarrett on social media specifically. And the answer is you can't. You can't do that. And nobody's ever going to let him near social media, apparently, is what I've heard. That's the rule. But yeah, Jarrett, same question. How did you get started playing? Kind of what was your inroad into games?
So when I was a little kid, I had a cool uncle who had several uncles, but I still would steal comic books and RPG books, and I learned off of BX magenta box, and my uncle taught myself and my two brothers a little bit, and then played with my brothers. Always have loved games. When we were little, I'm the older brother, so we always had some sort of games. And then, hit junior high school, and found a friend who had AD&D, and I was like, ooh, I've only played basic. And so we played some AD&D. Like first game we played, I played with Pat. We were like demigod nonsense, and we were just like slaughtering things. I was like, this is so cool. And then we found Rifts our freshman year of high school. We played a bunch of Rifts. We played a bunch of TMNT at scout camp and stuff like that. Played games a little bit in college. Didn't really have anybody to RPG with. So switched to board games, like more complicated stuff, like a lot of like Axis and Allies, stuff that more wargamey things that moving around. And I'm from the Midwest, so we didn't have like a games workshop. So, I mean, we have a game store within probably like 200 miles, I guess. Yeah, that's probably about right. It's about 70, 80, 200 miles, something like that. Fast forward, post college, playing board games with people. About 6 years ago, discovered DCC, and right around the same time that 5e kicked off. So I started running 5e at the friendly local game store, helped build up the Adventurers League. And then when the Adventurers League got big enough and it was cool, I was running the kids table, which is the best table to run because we were the loudest and we had the most fun. But instead of just playing 5e every week, we started playing DCC. And we started playing Classic Traveler. And we started playing, we played early versions of Mothership and stuff like that with like, the age range was like 10 to 15 to 16. So those kids, like, they had some good times. And that was, around in the late day G+ era and stuff. Started doing some editing for pay here and there, finding folks who understood. It's pretty much like what Fiona was saying. It's like, you read it and you see something and you're just like, this is kind of breaking the page a little bit, or that, this typo here and stuff like that, which is not a new way, shape, or form to say that we're like total aces. There's still going to be mistakes in books. It's just it's just how humans are. It's just what it is. None of our stuff is like perfect at all. But it's also, we're always growing it. Anyway, just been lucky enough to work with a bunch of cool people. Dan at Malsonia got me on board for Fever Swamp. That's where I met Christian and started working with him and learned a bunch of stuff about layout and design and information delivery and theory and practice for there. And then we met Fiona about a year later or something like that. We met at Gen Con. We just got ridiculous at Gen Con. So good times. Awesome. And then we've just been working together since then and working with other cool people and making all the things.
Let's see, how do I want to say this one? Ale Jotmo. That seems like it can't be right. It says those kids will be chasing that first high for the rest of their lives, Jarrett, from that table. And so, like I said, for people who don't know, I'm going to pop up some of the different projects y'all have worked on. So just so people get a kind of a sense of some of the different work that you've done, because it is fairly impressive. So like, if you've ever heard of this game, Mothership Sci-Fi Horror RPG, if you are familiar at all with the Melsonian Arts Council, lots of you watching right now may be aware we're doing a thing called Troika Fest, whether you watch the stream regularly or you're here specifically because of that. They've got the Academies of the Arcane Kickstarter up right now. We have the projects at Exalted Funeral, which, Fiona, I want to hear tons more about your role there, because I order way too much stuff from Exalted Funeral all the time. And then, a number of other projects that come out of those ecosystems and others. You mentioned stuff for Zine Quest and other places like that. There's tons of ways that y'all are plugged in right now. So when I will jokingly say things like y'all are the glue that holds the indie RPG community or the dark cabal that manages it all, that's only kind of a hyperbole. At the you talked a little bit about the evolution behind some of that, but Fiona, tell me a little bit more about kind of your role at Exalted, because that seems, out of all of those, right, like helping manage a line seems like a really kind of straightforward thing. Like you're helping people write in the same style repeatedly. Exalted, it seems like a much broader and bigger project with a lot of different kind of moving pieces. What's some of your role over at Exalted?
Well, I mean, I sort of got that job because for a while I was finding things, where I find out about someone's project where they have, a Shopify link through Itch where they've got a small number of copies, or where they have, they're selling copies of their zine via their Facebook or via their Twitter. I mostly use Twitter, and don't have, or have a successful Kickstarter but don't have distribution and are not located in the United States, or there's all sorts of things where it's like there's a good reason for there to be a storefront. And I think a lot of what I try to do is find interesting work, and encourage people to like the work enough that people will go into a print run. I think Jared Sinclair has a very similar view. It's almost like we're on a podcast together and, know each other. But right, like I think a lot of it is trying to like find things that are unique, and sometimes like accepting that like, the things that I like the most are not necessarily the things that everyone likes the most. My goal is to have a broad sort of tent that has interesting things in it, I don't play a lot of 5e, but like I, do try to find things in 5e that are being independently produced, because I think that like if you can get someone to be like, oh, this is like an indie zine in 5e that like I get a physical copy of and it's from a small creator, and like I'm interested in some other stuff, even if like their interest is really passing, there's the chance that they sort of cross into like different things. It's the same reason today I think we did a bunch of restocks for Contagion Press, and that's a small anarchist publisher of like queer theory. It's not necessarily role-playing supplements. It's very small pressing, and it's the same way that we stock occult stuff, which predates my involvement, but like I think a lot of the stuff about why I think craft production is interesting is part of why I go for it. Like I'm interested in when people are like, oh yeah, I'm doing this small print run because I'm, doing this process, is the sort of thing that like really interests me, because I care about labor issues, which are boring. Right? Like I care that creators get paid. I think that like when it comes down to it, like if you're doing something imaginative and you are working on it, that there should be a way for people to be able to see it and to make a decision about whether or not like it's what they're interested in, right? Like I don't like the concept of a canon list of like, if you haven't read this RPG, you're not allowed to have a conversation, or well, actually in third edition, like type arguments, because it smacks of a certain elitism, that claims that like length of engagement is value of contribution, which I don't think is necessarily true. So, I think people that don't have strongly predefined ideas about what they're trying to do are more likely to try something interesting.
Yeah.
And that's, so like it's looking for things where like we're buying 50 copies, most things aren't, because we're trying to, it's interesting because I'm trying to kind of like cast a wide net without just being like everything that exists is just here. And also people approach a lot. And also there's a lot of stuff with like production logistics of from an environmental standpoint, there's shipping overseas is, a major motion of objects, but also like for a creator in the UK who did a wood heart, and I'm blanking on names and I'm terrible at this, decided that like for the offset reasons to print domestically, but like Mixam US does not print on recycled paper. And it's like, this is one of those things where it's like, can we find a way to get people the ability to do small print runs on recycled paper? Because it's not because I want to force people to try to like be an environmentalist in a coercive sense. It's that like, I think the ability to make, like less expensive quality paper available and smaller print runs available at like a better price point means that people can create like more interesting things, which it helps if you have a local print shop, like the whole European tradition of publishing really for a long time was, as someone that studied philosophy, hey, the local professor's finished his thoughts on the universe and he's gone to the local bookbinder and said, make 100 of these.
Right.
And that's why you read Nietzsche. Like, was he a popular author in his life? No. Is he an interesting person? Yes. Are there elements of his philosophy that were co-opted by like his extremely right-wing sister that have permanently altered how people perceive his work? Yeah. And this is why I don't do philosophy anymore. But it's interesting. It's why I like, I get new challenges all the time, and it's fun. And I've rambled like endlessly.
No, you're good. Yeah, as much as you're like, craft and labor conversations are like boring. The reality is that we had Michael Lombardi on just like, a few weeks back, and somebody was like, came for the beards, stayed for the neo-anarchist, like anti-capitalist lecture, because it was absolutely amazing. So there are a lot of people who tune into this channel specifically looking. I love craft, like through Zine Quest, like conversations around how things were made, looking at specifically like Jack from Mousehole Press and the stuff that goes into that, through Eltan's Door 3, the work that Ben Lawrence has always put into how a book gets put together, and then knowing that there's somebody who helps with publishing who you can come to and say, look, I want to make this thing, I don't know how to, can you help me find somebody who will help me do it on recycled paper, bind it better, look for something local, look for something in my country code, get things like those are all helpful things. I was watching a conversation on unfold on Facebook the other day in the games industry, but in the board game side of things, where somebody was like, hey, somebody wants to produce their first game but needs a little bit of help and hand holding. Can someone help them? They don't need somebody necessarily like do all their Kickstarter, but they need to know what they should be doing. They don't know how to produce a game. And everybody was like, that's too much work, I can't do that. And in the RPG community, there would be a million people who'd be like, absolutely, we'd love to help you. If you want to be the face of this, if you have this idea, if you're willing to do the work, but you need help, we want to be involved in that. And I think one of the things that I've loved about getting to know the work that both of you do and seeing the fingerprints of that in different projects is that it's more than two people. It's a community of people who have dedicated their time and their attention to those people. And I have benefited, and this channel has benefited from the fruit of that. People like Jeremy, people like Michael, people like, all kinds of individuals who I'm sure you're coming across, games that sit on my shelf because at some point you discovered them and thought this would be something cool to put in Exalted, and then now it's sitting behind me somewhere. Like, that's a really amazing thing. And I love small creators getting that opportunity, because lots of times what stands in the way is a little bit of information or $200. And, like $200, if you don't have it, is the world. But if you do, it tends to not be a lot of money, right? Like, either you can say, hey, I can help somebody and give $20, $200, whatever it is, to help this project, or we can help take on some of this cost in exchange for being the publisher, like all those different pieces. And those are all important things for people to know exist in this sphere. It's one of the reasons I was excited. So like, absolutely feel free to nerd out on anything you want to.
Well, that's the one thing where I can now do a quick pitch to Jarrett, because the one thing that I famously know very little about is the actual dynamics of printing, like, which is why I'm trying to develop like a good list of like checklist of like what press does this, what is the price point break even if you want to do 100 copies, at the different ones, and like what is the quality you can get to. so that like you can create kind of some standardization towards, you know, the creator makes money, they make the book that they want to make, and like there's reliably people that understand like this is how you living wage a zine, you know, or how you acceptable return a zine, because like most people don't expect 100 off publishing to be their, you know, primary source of income, but like, you know, it's a thing of like good equity, and that is the way that like you make this a an industry where creators don't, you know, feel compelled to sell, you know, their IP in perpetuity, because like that's, you know, an ownership of real value that I think people don't quite understand is real value right now. But like Jarrett is like, you know, production manager and sees a lot of projects through to completion. So let me throw to my brilliant compatriot.
Yeah. Jared, before you hop in real quick, the name I couldn't pronounce earlier, it was actually Alex from Black Oath, who says that his work would not be the same without both of these two beautiful people. When I was talking about small creators who just are looking for help, Daniel Vander Koy says, raise his hand. And Malchitos, you are 100% correct. There is more involved in board game resource wise a lot of the time. Lots of times there's not, though, because it's a deck of cards or something else. But the fact that no one was willing to have the conversation with them and everybody was like, this is just too hard to help somebody do this, that's the problem. And in the RPG community, we typically don't see that. Now, you still have to be careful about who you're getting support and advice from, but you see a lot of people willing to give it. So sorry, Jared, go ahead.
Oh, no worries at all. Yeah, so to pick that thread up real quick. Yeah, some of the viewers, when you said that it's that someone was like, oh, I can't do that, you know, I don't, that's just too much. My eyes were kind of like, I hope there's nobody that I know, because it's like that's our thing. Like that's I want more people making more cool shit. You know, like that's what games are to me. Like I don't love every single thing. I'm sure people don't love every single thing I work on and every single thing I like. But that doesn't mean that that it shouldn't exist and it shouldn't get out there and reach, because there are people, you know, that dig that stuff and jam on it. And if here I am opening up to the work email, but no, it's there. My work email is projects@Exalted Funeral, and that's like if people are like, hey, I've written this thing and I don't know what to do with it. You know, we have various stages. Like I personally am always down to I will, it might take me a few days to get back to you by email, but I will do my best to reply to you and kind of help you take stock of where you're at and encourage you to, you know, maybe hook up with an editor or a developer or someone on, you know, and I mean, I generally shoot people towards Discord, you know, the Malsoni Discord, the Exalted Discord, the Mothership Discord. Those are the ones where I'm a lot active, but we can hook you up with folks that are at various stages, people that are really good with this, really good with that, you know, and just to try to help people get stuff out. Always open to pitches there too, you know. We're filling up, and I mean, like it's great at EF to have all that stuff to do, but that doesn't mean I don't ever want to like at least take a look at something that someone sends through. You know, never know, might be the next gold mine, or it just might be really freaking cool. But yeah, back to the printing stuff. I'm learning a lot really fast. Working with a couple of printers at Exalted now, and it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of finagling just to get the details just right. You know, you mentioned that Alex is watching the stream, and Alex has been there with the pain with me the last couple of weeks, getting some stuff worked through on a file. It's nothing's at fault. It's just we want to make sure that the book looks the best it possibly can when it hits print and it gets into people's hands. Like that's the big thing all the way down the line, you know, like aesthetics of art, design, layout, whatever folks want. That's what we want to try to impart and give off. But yeah, it's it's a learning process, and I'm excited to, be able to learn from other people all the time. And then someone says, hey, you might know this. And I was like, well, if I don't know it, I could find someone who does know it.
Yeah, awesome. If y'all out there watching right now, which by the way, hello, Collabs Without Permission /Vi, then, and hey, Skullboy /Sam, you each said the same thing. Some of my favorite people on stream, but on two different platforms you said it. So you didn't see each other's statements, but they're like on top of each other in my feed. If y'all have questions out there about the production process, about project management, about any of that kind of stuff, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I would love to be able to bring them to Jarrett and Fiona. Let's talk about kind of just generally, like, so let's, I'm gonna selfishly promote and plug things right now. Hold on real quick. So I've got a project right now that, that I'm working on tomorrow. I've done a bunch of the theory crafting on it right now. It's this Academy of Divine Sublimation. It's my Troika Fest entry, right? I'm going to pop it up on itch. It's theoretically secretly live right now, but I'm not really publicizing it other than the soft early peek, just for people on the stream right now. But somebody's got a new project, right? Jeremy's also here. All your fans are showing up. And I'm going to be making this project. The goal is to take it from me and my friend Alex sitting down tomorrow, taking some of the theory crafting I've done on a stream for about an hour and a half, talking through it, opening up a Google Doc, working on it, getting it as finished as possible. And then over the course of the next couple of weeks, as we get support and as Troika Fest Jam is finishing up, to continue to polish it out into its final written form, right? I'm lucky I have access to a layout person and an artist, and we can pull that kind of stuff together. But when somebody's coming to you with a new project like this, it's in concept phase, or it's in the very early stages of here's the idea. What are some things that they might need to take into account as they're starting a new project?
You want to start off, Fiona? I'm going to grab a little bit more hydration. I'll be right back.
Oh, get it. So I think like the first question, and it's always one that I care about, is like, what's your goal with this project, right? Because there's a difference between the goal of like, I have this idea and I want to express it, versus like, I would like to create something that fulfills this need, versus etc. Because like that way I could like kind of try and evaluate what someone's doing, right? Like and mostly, I'm most interested in like, I have an idea and I want to like polish this idea and get this idea into a thing, and like this is kind of like what I have. And if you have like an idea like that, the question is then like, okay, like how much space do you want to take up? How do you want to present information? And like, what does that look like broken down into tasks? Like what does your, thing you're working on look like? And then, like, how do you want to test it? Right? Because like the other thing is, how do you want to see if this works the way that you want it to work? Or how do you want to incorporate kind of like your own process? And then, the sort of thing of like, also, what is your like final delivery goal? Because like, if your goal is to get to Kickstarter, my suggestions based off of doing my own Kickstarter, where I, if I'd known that COVID was coming, I would not have just done a Kickstarter. And I'm, struggling to get some things arranged, and it's, really on me, and it's a lot of it is just kicking myself into doing something. And also like getting print quote stuff. But like, right, like, it's like, do you want to have a finished book? Do you want to see how much money you can get? And like, do you have like an idea for what happens if this goes really large, including like, look, like, you have to kind of be like, do you want to put a break in here somewhere of like, you do not want to produce more than 350 copies? Do you want to put a break in here of like, I don't mind if I don't sell every of like this limited thing, but like I want to make like, a small limited number that are going to be more expensive, because that's just kind of how you want to make it. And a lot of these things also depend on, what your like financial situation is, and like branding and marketing are not skills I have. I don't really know how to do that. If your question is how can I get eyes on my project, like I am not really helpful. And then the question is sort of like, how do you want to put a development process through? Do you want to do it through itch funding? Is this something where you're kind of doing it through like, a writing process and then running it for your friends and then like kind of finalizing it? Is this a thing where you have a Troika background and like if you've got a friend who's willing to try it in like, their game, it's good, and what constitutes finished and what constitutes your kind of goal. And then you just kind of lay out stuff through there. And editing, as far as I'm concerned, is trying to make like, words fit the page and distill the author's voice into its most essential kind of components so that you don't have a lot of verbiage that people don't use. And then there's also the difference of tone between like a more conversational and more technical thing, and that then comes down to personal taste and authorial voice and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. No, and those, I think that's lots of times like everybody's like, I want to I want to make something like, or I've enjoyed playing this, or lots of times it just starts with this is a thing that I don't think exists and I've been doing it in my home game and maybe it should be a thing and people don't know. So those refining questions I think are absolutely important and massively helpful. Like when I was sitting down with this project, it was like, literally, I just want to make something in Troika. And I'm dumb in this way. I'm somebody who loves to do experiments, but the problem is I will do experiments on 5 things at the same time in one test tube, which is again, great alchemy crossover. But I'm experimenting with major itch project for the first time, itch funding, doing live design, designing in Troika, all of those things for the first time. And for me, like, I'm okay with that, right? But I would also say it's not necessarily a good model for most creators if you don't know what you want. Because for me, at the end of the day, it's like, I want to make something fun and have at least a great PDF and maybe a small run for me and my friends at the end of the process. And that's fine. And so like, if I make $300 on it and I only want to print, 50 copies, I can absolutely do that for just me and whoever I want to do and pop it in my own little shop or whatever. But not everybody has that or knows that. And I would say that's actually not what most people probably actually want at the end of the day. They want something different. And then for me, anything over that is we get it to more people, or we take the money and we set it aside, and I then can give some of that money to another small creator who's trying to do something who can't, because that's something that we do as a company. Like, we try to put money aside to say, we've got $200 or $300 we can give a small creator to do art or do a playtest packet or do a small print run. And that's important to us. But for me, like, it is just a fun project that I was like, this is a good excuse to try designing in a system I've never designed in before. And so, but I think lots of people don't think about any of those. Jarrett, what would be your advice to somebody who, kind of from your perspective and some of the different stuff you work at, somebody who's got a project they're looking at and they're trying to figure out like how to work through it? What are some of the ways that they might interface with you in that process?
Don't be afraid to reach out and find us. Like I posted work email earlier, and I'm on Discord a lot. You can find me on the Exalted server, Melsonia server most of the time. And like, yeah, I'm approachable. Be nice and all that, but don't. You're not. I do my best to not be like, I don't have time for this person. Like, sometimes I'm tired. Sometimes it might take me a couple of days, but I do have time for people. I want more stuff out there. So yeah, it starts with not being scared to reach out and ask questions. Try to have as much of the, all of those things that Fiona said, like, what do you want the book to look like? Do you have an idea of a print run? How many pages and stuff like that. Like, and that's all stuff that we'll throw ideas back and forth and, kind of coach different ways and see what's up. Yeah, the biggest thing is just don't be afraid to ask. It's the answers aren't always like a Google search away for stuff like this.
Yeah.
like I wish they were.
Yeah, if someone wants to write a book on how to publish a zine with like how to do the most basic forms of layout and how to source public domain art and like make it in an attractive format that like is easy to follow and like probably that will do really well.
It's what's hot right now. Like it's what everybody wants to know. I mean, like if you scroll through itch, the amount of like zine template things there are right now, some of which are really good, some of which aren't actually helpful at all. There's an absolute ton of them, and there's constantly people looking for that kind of stuff out there also too. So let's talk a little bit real quick about Academies of the Arcane. Because it is Troika Fest, and I know that Jarrett, I know that you are editing on the book. I don't know, Fiona, if you've had any sort of interaction with it, or if you just want to tell us what house you are in the Academies of the Arcane. Do you have a house that you're favoring currently?
So I'm blind on it because like I think I'm proofing at some point, but haven't seen a copy yet. So I have the weird thing of that means that like I generally don't back on KS, so I haven't had a chance to read. Obviously, I'm locked head for just the greatness of name. Also, I feel like any house that Brian designs is good. Like they're just super detail oriented. I've gotten to look over their work before. And, you know, I think that it has like this real sense of place that is fun. So like, I'm excited to get to do this. I think the Kickstarter is doing really well, like, you know, which is great. And, you know, that's excellent.
Awesome. You're also the first person I've heard go strong Lophead, and I'm 100%. I'm proud of you for just naming that and owning it. And I think it's the best logo out of all the logos. That's the one that like always catches me. I'm solid House Dreamcleaver 100% personally, but I respect the commitment. Jared, tell us a little bit about Academies of the Arcane.
Rector Worm, y'all are fools. Rector Worm. I love the name. I love the logo. It's fantastic. So Academies is a big book. Brian wrote it. They turned in the manuscript like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. We've just been busy with all the things in the rows and the time, but assembled a super great team. Jared on edits, Ja'Cory Holder on art, Meredith Silver on layout. Fiona's going to be handling proofing. Christian and I back there doing our thing. Dan is just killing it with this Kickstarter we're trying out back kit this time. Learning a little bit of a learning curve. And hopefully I'm not going to ruin Dan's day, but I'm going to ruin your day, Dan. There's more stretch goals coming. I'm not going to say what they are, but they're coming.
I mean, last night on stream, somebody may have said, burn Dan's cell and eat his ashes. It may have been but in the best way possible, in a way that I think right. Dan would have 100% supported. So, I mean, any level of putting on blast you're doing right now, it's fine.
No, I'm not.
Stretch goal stat Dan cell is a boy wizard. Stretch goal stat loot gearing. Also is a precocious British boy wizard.
I wasn't doing that to hurry up. I was just like letting folks know that
right.
Yes, there are more coming. So we are super jazzed with the support we've got so far, and everything's going well. Great engagement. Thank you, Tony, for Troika Fest. The stars, aligned. We got this worked out.
Such a great meeting of things. And so I jokingly thanked Dan for pushing back the Kickstarter launch to the first day of Troika Fest just for me, and so because I'm sure that was
people thought we were doing it as a
April Fool's joke. I know.
We're like, no, we're just last minute. We put poor Meredith up against it. She did the Kickstarter video in like a day, like Christian and I shipped her a bunch of props and via Amazon, and they were just taking forever to get there. And it was like, they got there. She did that amazing video, boom, and she's just been killing it with giving us all of our assets and stuff like that for the campaign and then backer kit. It's super awesome, and yeah.
That's awesome. We've got a lot of House Dreamcleaver in the chat across different platforms. We do have ETB Tilted as another House Loptheaded. And then Exalted Funeral just asked on YouTube, is this why no one is working? So...
Hey, you if that's Matt, then Matt can just shush. Because I already worked this morning. I talked to Kristen. Come on.
Actually, I think both of us did.
I know. See, this guy, he's such a taskmaster.
Just no rest for the wicked.
That's right.
Here, I've mentioned Exalted Funeral, so now I'm at work.
I'm about to say, I feel like this has just been good marketing for Exalted Funeral. We've talked a lot about how great Exalted Funeral is at bringing small indie creators to press and helping them navigate the ins and outs of the publishing sphere and why people should love to work from them, support them, and buy them. C.A. Berlitz, I don't know why AutoMod blocked your message. If you put a link in it, though, because of spammers, we don't let people post links because otherwise we just get a million spam bot links. If you need something specific, shoot me a message and I'll try to bring it to the chat. And then Papa Joe wants to know if Matt is writing that, why isn't he working? That was the
market research is also work, Matt.
So
watching the stream, look at you. You're monitoring our productivity. Now people are asking questions back and forth. Alex wants to know, Matt, does Christian know you're here? And so everyone's tracking everybody right now. No, that's awesome. I just last question. When y'all read a lot of books, I know I've heard this from Jarrett. How often do y'all get to play? Just for the fun of it, play like. There's a big problem, I think, with a lot of creators where we only play our own games or our friends' games when we're play testing, and we don't necessarily, which is not, it doesn't mean it's not fun, right? But we don't necessarily just get to sit down and play for the enjoyment of it. So how do y'all keep yourselves kind of grounded in the ability to play, or do you get that opportunity?
I play DCC every Thursday. Alternate DCC, and then when I can be motivated, I run Mothership on the opposite with Doug, James, Carmen, Steve, Wayne, Stefan, Tom, Matt. And then Jeremy, who's in the chat, runs DCC. We're fucking up Strahd. Like we're out to get him. On alternating Saturdays, I've been doing a couple of play tests for Mothership box set stuff here and there. Occasionally I'll run stuff on Exalted server. But yeah, no, I actually at least get in 1 to 3 games a week. Fiona and I both recently played with Banana and Sin for
Shingashi, Jiangxi,
for a new thing.
One.
Can't talk to them. Yeah, it's awesome. Yes, it was a great game. I'm excited for that one.
Jeremy says TPK next weekend, bro.
Oh yeah, whatever. I'm so scared, Jeremy. I'm so scared.
Fiona, how about you? Do you get to get to the table very often?
Yeah, I mean, I try to when people invite me to games, show up and I try to play in games that are not related to work I'm doing, and I try to do a lot of play testing. I try to show up for one-offs for people I know when they're testing something and have a good bit of availability for it, and to not treat that time as work, you know, create like a pretty healthy separation of look, like the moment that like my thought process when I'm playing a game is like I should buy a copy of this and sell it, you know, is like one, I probably, if I'm playtesting in your game, already made that decision and that I like it enough that I will like do playtesting. And you know, two, it, you know, I think that that is how you like lose enjoyment in things that you do is treating them as you know like a routine in a negative way. So you know, I try to play a lot. I try to also you know like play a lot that like doesn't really relate to me doing Twitter much or such because it creates the feedback loop of like, yeah, I just gotta figure out an update for this thing I'm doing, which just like then becomes like, you know, a routine. And, you know, most of my Twitter is very free form garbage. Um, it's an experiment, and why have you not unfollowed me? I don't understand.
I love it.
Um,
No, that's awesome. Josh Demansky did ask something that I was gonna, especially because you talked about it. Josh Demansky has types, when's that Mothership box set coming? And then a whole lot of eyeballs. Because there's a lot of great stuff, So Zine Quest, we saw an absolute phenomenal, and you guys were at the center of a lot of it also. We saw an absolutely phenomenal amount of Zine Quest projects that were Mothership projects. Of those, anyone that was, I would say, of substance, which I would say fully formed, good idea, actually connected, not just like, hey, maybe I'll last minute make a Mothership project, especially ones that were plugged in with the Mosh Discord. A lot of them touched on different people of the Moonrat Conspiracy in that Mothership community on Discord, and every single one of them that I was tracking was like a 12K plus project. So they all just did phenomenally well. And that is, that was, you know, the absolutely great videos, the soundscaping, the great production thing, the well-formed ideas that were well articulated across consistently good pages, as well as good community formation to help support that in an absolutely great system. But tell me a little bit more about some of the stuff we might be able to be excited about from Mothership coming up, whatever you can, whatever isn't behind the closed veil.
No comment. So we can't get into too much detail because like literally it's we're in the testing and,
no, totally,
and the writing and the design and the early stages and we got a good group of testers and our fabulous group of developers, and we're working on stuff like literally every day, and people are running games and we're going through drafts of test documents, and Sean's starting to send me like mock-ups and things like that. And so no, we're just, it's one of those, we can't put a date on it because we put a date on it, somebody gets like upset and like,
no, I wasn't thinking date. I wasn't looking for that grand reveal, though. If you guys want to come back on for that grand reveal, I'm happy to have you back. Let Sean know.
Sure.
But no, just what are some of the things that are planned for that project? Because there's some people who are ravenously waiting for it and are like, don't understand that the idea to implementation takes actual work. There are other people who I've talked to who are like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. So just a little bit about whatever you can tell us about that project. Like I said, I think it'd be great for people to be able to hear that there is a Mothership project coming that is a box set, theoretically, as long as everything goes well in the production process, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What are some, is there anything that is kind of public consumption that people can expect about that project?
That we have mentioned before on our Discord server a lot is the Warden's Operations Manual, which is our DMG-ish type book. And that's going to have, you know, more advice. We're taking 3+ years of all of this stuff of everybody playing it and feedback from everybody and testers, and kind of, you know, we all come from a rulings not rules thing, and it's like second nature to us. Like if there's a blank, I'm going to fill it in. It's just a thing. Some folks brand new to games in general might not be comfortable doing that. So there's going to be some tools in there to kind of help that along. And then there will be, of course, if we're doing the trifecta of books, there will be a monster book, a bestiary book. Can't talk too much about that one. That's going to be a big surprise. And yeah, there's going to be some other stuff in there. Like I said, Sean, I don't know if you're watching. Don't kill me.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's something I know people who follow Mothership or are generally plugged into the idea of Mothership have been just incredibly excited to see what is being worked on, and so it comes up at least 2 or 3 times a week in different conversations I'm a part of. That one person's super excited about, and the other person's like, "Oh, are they doing one?" And so, which I think is a great place to be when you're in development, is that you've got half the group totally excited and half the group completely unaware. And so, also lots of love in the chat for Fiona's Twitter feed. So if you aren't following Fiona, her Twitter handle is right. Oh, I didn't switch back to the normal feed. Is right below. Now also too. It's been an absolute blast to have both of you on. I don't know that we saw any other questions in there, but specifically right now, is there anything that you would love to have people go look at, check out, a project you're excited about, whether it's one that you've worked on or one that you just think is a good idea that you want to share with people?
I know stuff that's itch funding that I bought recently and I'm like reading through and really enjoying are Kanabo and Shorb, which is respectively Nick Masick, who's Monkey Paw Games, and Ian Woolley, who is Ian Woolley. I think that they're both like, I don't know, like why I think itch funding is like a good way of having like, look, I've got this idea is, you get a chance to read over it. And if it hits the funding point, like it goes to a certain print and like it's a zine. And, there's zines that are, I think, making really clever use of not spending a lot. And I think that that's, things that I find really interesting. And and Bacte's Terrifying Cuisine dropped, an update towards like the new like finalized edition, and like that's I think my favorite thing to run as a con game. It's like super. I like food television like to a degree. Like I used to work in kitchens, like doing like weird chaos with that. Like I have like dumb draw ups for things that I'll never find anyone that'll let me run. Where it's like, look, what if I do Gem Prison of Zardax, but like also with Bacte's Terrifying Cuisine, where it's a dungeon that randomizes openings to some degree and has like a meta puzzle that also is opening into bits of the kitchen stadium. And the answer is no one will ever let me run that. It would take forever.
Fiona, I would love to talk to you more because I talked with the Sam a little while ago, and we've talked about it on stream a couple times. But right now, I am working with an artist, and we are working on what the working title is. It's not the final title. Is Flavor Force, and the concept is that it is a fantasy kitchen dungeon crawler where you are both managing a gourmet kitchen, but in order to get the ingredients you need, you have to go down into your refrigerator, slay and harvest all the ingredients you need, come back up, and then manage the prep and execution of that game. And Bacte's is absolutely a touchstone on that project, so we'll have to get you on to play that with us sometime.
Oh God, that I
100% want you to run the adventure you were just talking about.
I mean, I'll be honest, games make you do some weird research. Because the Bactos know what snake venom tastes like, which is, according to people that are herpetologists and handle snakes, an interest of mine, because I think snakes are perfect creatures, it tastes like wet chicken feathers. So smearing that with the anti-taste thing that inverts it, that's like the equivalent to the magic fruit that makes sour things sweet, so you can like just chow on a lemon. Like, I don't know what the inverted taste of wet chicken feathers is, but like I am interested in other people's perception of what that would be like.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Exalted Funeral said I need to send 50 copies of the game whenever we get it. But yeah, lots of love for Giano and the Roll for Tars crew. And then Fiona, people do want to know. It says you have a few personal projects going on. Can you talk about them?
Yeah, because I haven't. I think I've sold like one thing, which is on a long fuse. I wrote for my own game jam where I never finished my own submission. I wrote a thing about like that's kind of my attempt to do a social mega dungeon, to do a thing where like instead of there's one person that warns you and obviously their job is for you to be like silence peasant and shove them in the face, but rather have like the idea of a living society built around excluding an area. And it's because I'm obsessed with like long-term nuclear warning systems and like uh, the like idea of creating a nuclear cult to prevent people from accessing them, which is just kind of a thing I finished writing and am like working on not publishing myself because I have ADHD and am terrible at interfacing with printers, and it's not my best skill, I'll be honest. I have like a kind of weird hex crawl thing I'm working on that I'm probably not going to release for a long time because I want to like write it up and run it and fine tune it a lot. I have a dungeon I wrote for Die Sugars that like is my sort of like puzzle dungeon that's based on the principle of one of my favorite like childhood stories, which is unlikely childhood heroes for the child of atheist scientists that grew up in rural Pennsylvania. Is one of my favorite children's books was Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins, because Herschel is a clever hero. He's not stronger than anyone. He's not particularly like he's an everyman, but he outsmarts every single one of these demons to successfully, go through the cycle of lighting Hanukkah candles. And the demon of greed, he tricks by being like, you can pull all the pickles you want from this jar, but you only get one pull. And then the demon tries to grab all of the pickles and gets its hand stuck in. And, it's like, you've cursed me. And he's like, if you agree to just not screw with me for the rest of the night, I'll totally tell you how to get it out. I'll undo the curse. And of course it's like, yes, obviously. And he's like, you grabbed too many pickles. You can't pull all of the pickles out at once. You're an idiot. And, that's a book I haven't read since I was like 5, but like that particular like clever sort of like problem solving was one of those things that I grew up to like in fantasy and in fiction, and is why I like playing unlikely protagonists when I'm a player. I prefer characters with abysmal stats and maybe like one really good one. So it's a puzzle dungeon built on like there's tons of wealth. The question is, how do you get it out of the dungeon? Not how do you find wealth, where there's just potatoes and rats, but rather there's, a bunch of stuff made of gold, but much of it's large or cumbersome or weird. So those are things I'm working on. I have like a lot of things that I've partially done for Mosh that have been kind of, things where when Sean is, like free and clear in a meaningful way, I can kind of be like, cool, now we've got it kind of like moving and I can finish this quickly because I know what I'm doing and I have most of it planned out. But like, it's hard to finish a project where you finish it and it just kind of shelves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's stuff that I personally am working on. I'm also going to make a hack allegedly called Occidental Adventures that's based on Victorian pseudoscience, so that instead of like the elemental stats, you have like Vril and Orgone and other stuff, and have openings like the hand and a half sword and the tulip on playing the Occidental mindset, because I'm fascinated with this Julian Barnes book I read in grad school, England, about like England opening a theme park to contain all of England in one theme park to make international tourism more effective. And, ultimately it becomes a question of like, no one really has a sensible sense of history. And then also when you just shove it in a park, everything Jurassic Parks, it's a very British Jurassic Park.
Awesome.
I think it's a good book. You know, if you're going to read a book by a fairly successful white male author, it's one that I think at least is very well written. And, you know, I've always thought that idea, as someone who studied, you know, a lot of the pseudosciences that were heavy in colonialism, and also in like popular thought. It's interesting of the idea of like, what if you like exaggerated a concept of a world through that, because it's the fundamental problem of trying to simulate a culture by making rules, is that like no one that exists in a real culture is so horribly rule bound that like they can't break certain etiquettes or stuff. It's just, that's where role playing happens.
Right.
And I also don't know if that's necessarily the spirit of a lot of games that have weird cultural exoticism that feels uncomfortable to me. But like, you know, it's maybe also me making a shitpost joke that will probably sell like 10 copies. It will mostly be me being like, look, let me be clear. None of these things are real. And also, like, many of these have now, because of the way that all conspiracy theories are converging into a single point, are heavily associated with anti-Semitism and Nazi recruitment. And you should not like look into Vril. It's a thing that like Hollow Earth science fiction got into, and then later the people that got into like the idea that like there's UFOs holding the Fifth Reich or whatever, like it's eventually a lot of stuff falls into nonsense.
Yeah. No, I still like, I do love some of my favorite games are the ones that were like, I wrote a shit post or made a dumb joke and then was obsessed with it forever and then knew too much about it. And then I made a game out of it, and it's actually way better than you think it is. And you should definitely check it out. Those are absolutely where I tend to fall in love. And so, Jarrett, how about you? What are some of your projects that you're most excited about right now? Whether they are ones you're working on or other ones.
I'm working on all kinds of everything. I've mentioned a bunch of stuff over this. Fiona and I just wrapped a big chunk editing on the Land of Eam RPG from Ben Costa and James Parks. They are a duo. They do a series of graphic novels called Rickety Stitched and the Gelatinous Goo. They're awesome. The Ben and James are awesome. The comics are awesome too. But Ben and James are super awesome. We just wrapped the big chunk of that. We've got a bestiary and sandbox stuff to work on, so that's coming down the line. Some other secret stuff coming from Exalted Funeral. Other things coming up later from Melsonia, like Swivers is coming up later this year. Luke's one of Luke Gehring's babies, with illos by David Hoskins. It's going to be awesome. This Postcards from Cable Street. This is a proof copy, but it should be dropping fairly soon. Jelly Muppet is covering the print, the publish run from Soul Muppet Publishing, and worked it out. Exalted Funeral is going to be doing fulfillment on it. It's a collection of interviews, articles, gameable material to benefit a couple of anti-fascist organizations in England, Hope Not Hate and Football Lads and Lassies Against Fascism. We started it last fall, and it got derailed just by the long-term end of a lot of things that were happening near the end of the year, and it just kept going and going. But yes, it has been proofed. Files are ready. That is a Twitter that people can follow. It's cable_from Postcards from Cable Street. So hopefully getting to pre-order up shortly.
Yeah. If you liked this project that's over my shoulder right here, you should definitely go check out Cables. It's absolutely phenomenal. But if you checked out Dissident Whispers, same hands, doing some of the same type of amazing work, and so can't wait to support that project and help get word out about it also too. So just really amazing things. Thank you both so much. I think I told you both independently, though maybe Fiona, I wasn't as clear about it last night as I should have been. I'm deeply appreciative of the work that y'all do. I know what it's like to be not personally, but from having watched it, I know how important the behind the scenes things that a lot of people don't think about when they sit down to do a project are. And I know that having people who can do them well, who can point you in the right direction, who can provide that support and that influence, as well as people who are passionate about their own projects like y'all too are absolutely essential to the RPG community growing and being supported and becoming a more professional and humane place. Not professional for professionalism's sake, but professionalism for all the good it does when people take a craft and an art form seriously, and people who help make sure that projects stay on track, that the words fit together the right way, that the different team members come into play are essential to making that happen. And I'm just really grateful for it. So thank both of y'all for doing that and for being on also too. Thank everybody who's joined us in chat. Prestige Class is a series we do on a fairly regular basis. This is a special edition. We were looking at Troika in detail this week. Jarrett's actually a big part of why Troika Fest happened, because when we started talking about some other things that were Troika related, I was like, I haven't played. And then I was like, I've been thinking about this fest thing for a while. What would it look like to do that? And he was like, you should do it, which apparently he says to everybody whenever they have an idea. He just tells them they should, because then if they're successful, he gets partial credit.
You see him do the Dell laugh. I'm like, does it do that?
And so, but was a huge part in encouraging me to do this. It's been phenomenal to work with him, to have him run Academies of the Arcane for us on Monday, to have Fiona run So You've Been Thrown Down a Well for us last night, which maybe one of the best, maybe one of the most enjoyable times I've had on a stream last night ever. Like I absolutely enjoy every game that we play, but I kept on like bursting out with laughter last night. Absolutely phenomenal. Crew, tomorrow, just FYI for everybody, again, I want to remind you, is it Thursday? I don't even know what day it is tomorrow. We're going to be taking that game I shared earlier. I'll drop it in the chat again, Academy of Divine Sublimation. As somebody who is a little obsessed with alchemy, both in a gameable way as well as in the real world, it seems weird to me that Troika doesn't have an alchemy system. And so I'm going to sit down and create procedures for alchemy system. Actually, that's mostly done, low key. That part's pretty much in the can. But my friend, our Alex Murray, who is an improv artist who appears on stream with me a lot, is going to sit down and we're going to knock out at least D36 worth of potions, and talk about all those things, get them all set up, and then do some other designs, some backgrounds, some other pieces like that. So if you want to come watch two people to design a Troika supplement live, you can do that. It's actually already up and it is available to support on itch. We are itch funding the project. There are also community copies available, and every time anyone buys or supports it, it creates more community copies. So if you are able to support it at any level, I'm happy to add more community copies just because somebody supported it, even if it wasn't at a level where it got you anything or anything else. We're using itch funding, which is an attempt to create a more, I would say, more humane and more accessible form of crowdfunding. I don't have problems accessing most of the normal forms, but they are incredibly emotionally draining. And so we're just doing this as a crazy little experiment in live design and in a new type of funding process. You can check that out by following me on itch. It's also submitted to the Troika Fest Jam tomorrow morning, because I wasn't going to do it until I was ready to pop it out publicly, but I'll drop that link in the chat in just 1 second. And then we're going to be playing it live sometime later on this month also too, to test all the dumb things we did to create an alchemy system for Troika. So come on back for that. Thank you so much, Jarrett and Fiona, again, for being on with us today. If y'all have, if you are an independent game designer who needs support to help your project happen, please reach out to these two amazing people. Also, if you're getting to the point where you're like, hey, how do I get it out and help people know about it? Then reach out to us at that point in time, at +1EXP across any social media platform, +1EXP.com. We're a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy. And we even took levels in Bardic College creation, for the good of the party, not because it was a min-maxed build, because it's certainly not. But we would love to support you in any way that we can. If you're a player who's looking for great games, this is a great place to find them. If you're a designer who's looking for great games, we would love to share yours. But until next time, this has been Prestige Class with Jarrett and Fiona, and class is dismissed. Bum, 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 bum. Trick-a-dice.